So far we've been discussing scalar types in Python. So we have strings. We can set a variable to a string, a single line string or multi-line string. Or you can have a number. The number can be floating point or integer. Then it can be a Boolean, which means true or false. Or it can be none. So none is a scalar type, so which means it has nothing in it. That's what it means. Sometimes none is useful, so we'll look at that later on. And then we also looked at typecasting, which means Python will automatically, there are two things about types. One is you don't have to define the type explicitly. Python will automatically figure out what type a particular variable is. And the second thing is when you do some operations, Python will, like if you add an integer with a floating point, the answer will be floating point. Python will figure that out. But you can also use typecasting, like you can take a number and then make it into a string of that number. So that's called typecasting. Sometimes you may want to add a string and then a number in that string. So you can't add a string and a number. So number needs to be first converted into a string. So you typecast the number into a string and then you add them. Now we're going to look at another type, okay, that is somewhat different from everything else, and that is date and time. And date and time scalars can be defined and modified, and you can do arithmetic operations with them. And for that, we have to use a built-in library or module that Python has. And that's called date-time module. Okay, so first, for us to be able to use those functionalities in the date-time module, you have to invoke it. Okay, and you can do it in this fashion. So you can do import date-time. Okay, but this is not the way we're going to do it. Import date-time. Okay. Now what this will do is this will bring in, this will establish a connection to that module. Okay. And then once you have done that, right, then you can use, okay, so now I have done the connection, and then okay, date time and then a period. Okay, so that's how I need to use date, time, period, and then I can use any one of the functions that is available within that module. Okay, so that's one way of establishing a pathway to all the functionality that is available in date-time module. Okay. Now another way of doing that is, okay, so you say import date time as, okay, and then you give a nickname for date time. So you don't have to type date time every time. So you can give a smaller name like DT or DTE or whatever that you want. Okay, but normally we will see when we get to other modules there are some standard nicknames that are used. Even though you can use any nickname you want, it's normally it's a good practice to use the common nickname, the nickname that people normally use. Okay, so that's the second way. So you can say DTE. So now from that point onwards, DTE, you see, just typing DTE means that you will access everything that's available in date time. Okay, so that's the second way of establishing connection. And the third way, which is what we're going to do here, okay, suppose you want only some of the functions. Okay, so a particular module may have lots and lots and lots of functions, but you want only one or two of them. So if you want to do it this way, then you say from date time import, and then you specify what exactly you want to import. Okay, so here if you look at the notes, you see that we're going to import three of them: date, time, and then date and time. We're going to import only those three functions. Oh, I have a typo here. Okay, so date time, if I use date time, it will directly use the date time function. Okay, so now let's set up a date. So you say date equal to, I'm doing this in the wrong cell. I want to do it here. dt equal to, then I say date time, right? And then I can specify the date time in this format. So which is, you have to, when you use the date time function, you start with the year 2011, month, date, hours, minutes, and second. Okay. You don't have to provide hour, minute, and second, but this is the full example if you use all of it. Okay, you can just use the first three, or you can use the whole thing. Okay, now if you look at the variable dt, okay, we set dt to that, right? So now the dt is a special type, like the string and the integer and floating point, Boolean, and so on and so forth. In the date time format, okay, that is a particular type. And if you run dt, then it will tell you this is in date time format, and this is the date time. Now if you try to find what type it is, right, you want to know what type it is, then you can say type dt, and that will tell you what is the type of that variable. So like integer, string, and so on. So this is a date time type scalar. Scalar meaning it has just one value. Then you can use specific functions. Suppose we want to know for this date, what is the day, comma, you want what is the minute, right? So dt is the variable name dot the function. So it gives you the day of the month and then the minute in that date time scalar value. And suppose we want to know what is the date, so we can say dt date. Okay, so that will give you the date portion of the scalar, of the variable, the date portion, which will be year, month, and the day of the month. And then if you want the time portion, so this when you are trying to find a particular part, just the month part or just the day part, you don't use the left and the right parentheses. Okay, for an entire portion of the date and the time, you have to use the right and the left parentheses. So it gives you the time.